Eneo hili si hivyo, mambo ni matatu.
Ladies and gentlemen, what political formation do you think can stop William Ruto in 2027? Because we all know that if the opposition can unite and come up with a good strategy, they can easily defeat William Samoei Arap Ruto. But which formation can defeat him? Which ticket? I have some 4 tickets here, which I want to ask you to pick one or two, which you think can defeat William Ruto. And the reason I'm asking you this question is because I'm seeing George Natembeya and Fred Matiang'i making some moves. And those moves are causing serious political panic to Kalonzo Musyoka and Rigathi Gachagua. Let us look at some of the tickets which are likely to be there in 2027, and let me know which one can easily defeat William Ruto. The first ticket is that where Kalonzo Musyoka is the presidential candidate and Fred Matiang'i as the running mate. Can that ticket defeat William Ruto? The second ticket is where Fred Matiang'i is the presidential candidate and Kalonzo Musyoka is the running mate. Do you think it can work? And the third ticket is where Kalonzo Musyoka is the presidential candidate and Eugene Wamalwa is the running mate. Can that ticket win? And the last ticket is where Fred Matiang'i is the presidential candidate and George Natembeya is his running mate. The last two, where Kalonzo is the presidential candidate and Wamalwa is the running mate, and Matiang'i and Natembeya, those 2 tickets will only happen if there's a fallout. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason I asked that question was simple. I'm seeing George Natembeya and Fred Matiang'i making certain political moves, and those moves are actually causing anxiety in Kalonzo Musyoka and Rigathi Gachagua's camp. Ladies and gentlemen, on Wednesday, Fred Matiang'i paid a courtesy call to George Natembeya.
Hi, how are you? Bali ya leo? Bali ya Kitale? Very good, tuambia sawa. Hi, how are you? How old was
That was his campaign poster for 1974.
Oh, is that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he was very young.
He was 11, so everyone think he's a he was kind of a composition. Oh, so it was, yeah.
Okay. No, it's very nice. Diversity of thought also, just that.
And then the rest.
And it was not just a courtesy call. After the visit in office, Matiang'i and Natembeya met with Natembeya's grassroots network on the ground. These 2 gentlemen are clearly men on a mission. I remember in October this year, the united opposition stormed the Luhya nation. They were in Vihiga, I think they went to Kakamega, and finally to Bungoma. Natembeya was in the same vehicle with Fred Matiang'i.
Tukuja kukaribisha wageni wetu. Leo hii tuko hapa na wageni wengi. Tuko na Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua ndani ya nyumba. Leo hii tuko na Mheshimiwa Kalonzo Musyoka. Leo hii
What happened was that Matiang'i and Natembeya had planned some rallies. They had to sit together again as the united opposition. And that's how Rigathi and Kalonzo found themselves in that rally. But the question is, what is their real objective? And why should Kalonzo and Rigathi be worried? Number one, we are talking of winning formation. The only way the united opposition can win is if they are united. Which means Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Natembeya, Fred Matiang'i, and the rest must unite. And they must agree on the winning formula. And that winning formula is hidden somewhere in the numbers. And for me, those numbers are in Mount Kenya. Those numbers are in Luhya Nation. The truth is, I doubt if the Luhya Nation and Mount Kenya will produce a presidential candidate. I doubt. The presidential candidate will only come from the Kamba Nation through Kalonzo and the Gusii region through Matiangi. That's how complex it is. So they must agree. But Rigathi Gachagua is polling the party for Kalonzo because Rigathi has already settled on Kalonzo as the presidential candidate, which means he might not approve that of Fred Matiang'i. And that's where the problem is. And for me, that's the reason why Matiang'i is also now moving away from them, if you are keen. The other day when they met at Chui House, Matiang'i, Martha Karua, and this group also met somewhere. And you can clearly tell that Matiang'i is now on a mission of also consolidating his own networks. And is bringing very credible individuals. Peter Munya, the other day, Karua was part of it. You can see in Trans Nzoia, he was with one man who is heading their campaign team, Professor Dr. Muhisa Kitui. So the winning formation is now the biggest challenge here. Number two, there's also now the Uhuru Kenyatta factor in all this. The reason why Rigathi Gachagua is so protective is because of the fear of Uhuru Kenyatta and Jubilee Party. Fred Matiang'i has already taken charge of Jubilee Party. That alone has now set up a contest between DCP and Jubilee in Mount Kenya. And just like I explained to you guys, Mount Kenya might not produce a presidential candidate in 2027. But their votes will determine who becomes the next president. So Uhuru Kenyatta factor might actually force Rigathi Gachagua to bolt out or to run away and support Kalonzo. In short, there's no way Rigathi Gachagua will allow Uhuru Kenyatta and his party to thrive in Mount Kenya. That would simply mean, because Kalonzo is already on the side because Kalonzo Musyoka is already on the side of Rigathi. He's seeing numbers there. Matiang'i is now saying, okay, let me stick with Uhuru. So we're likely to see a fallout. Will that be good for the opposition? I doubt. Number three is now the credibility. Natembeya and number three is the credibility. Natembeya and Fred Matiang'i brings kind of credibility to the ticket. Number three is the credibility. Natembeya and Fred Matiang'i brings credibility, the dynamic duo. The only thing I doubt is whether they can bring the actual number. I'm sure Matiang'i will bring the Gusii votes, but I'm not so sure whether Natembeya will successfully manage to bring the Luhya votes, and whether Uhuru will be able to bring for them the entire Mount Kenya. Yeah, but they bring the credibility which will attract more people. There are people who are not comfortable with William Ruto. And at the same time, they're also not comfortable with where Rigathi Gachagua is. They will easily see this ticket as more credible. And that will work in their favor. Number 4 is the campaign resources. Kalonzo Musyoka is struggling. I doubt if Rigathi has enough resources. But Uhuru has. Matiangi can raise enough resources. So which means, in terms of resources, Matiangi Natembeya ticket cannot run Kalonzo Rigathi ticket. And that's very serious challenge you have to deal with. Because 2027 presidential elections in the Republic of Kenya is going to be the most expensive presidential elections in the history of the Republic of Kenya. That is a fact we cannot run away from. So it requires money. But if they were united, then Matiangi can raise funds internationally and also through Uhuru raise funds, and then they pump in their kitty. So whether Kalonzo would be the presidential candidate or Matiangi, they'll have resources to campaign. So that's another challenge which this ticket or these moves are causing to Kalonzo. And lastly, they're now presenting a serious third force. Because you see, for Rigathi, he wanted to force things. And he started it early, for those who've been following. Immediately, Fred Matiang'i declared his bid. His first step was to advise Matiang'i to go and join Gusii-based political party. He wanted to confine Matiang'i to a Kisii leader, which meant if Matiang'i were to sit on them on a table, he would be asked, where are your numbers? Then they'll point to him the number of the Kisiis. Matiang'i saw the signs. And that's why he's with Munya, he's with Natembeya, you see, he's moving around. So that if he's asked, where are your numbers, he can point. I have in Mount Kenya, I have in Loya. So he's now automatically become a national leader. But the question is, but the truth is, they have now presented the country with a serious third force. I don't know what you think. That's my take. Until next time, this is Makwiny. Bye-bye.